Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. Well, this is a special edition of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, mid-June 2026, and we were privileged enough last week to have a session with gubernatorial candidates Senator Barbara Kirkmeyer and Victor Marx, both running for the governor of the state of Colorado. We've not been able to touch base and make contact with Representative Scott Bottoms as of this recording, but hopefully we can turn around and shed some light on some of the things that are important to sportsmen and women, conservationists in the state of Colorado. While we dived into a few different subjects with each one of the candidates, we wanted to give them a little bit more time than what you saw on a debate or maybe just during a general interview or a newspaper article. So we start off with Senator Barbara Kirkmeyer. It's about an hour and a half, and then we take a little bit of a break, do some commercial breaks, and then we're going to get into a spot that we did with gubernatorial candidate Victor Marx. We hope that you find those enlightening. We hope that you find information that might help you make an educated decision during the coming primary, and it might actually give you some insight as to who could lead the state of Colorado better than what we've been doing over the course of the last 8 years. No matter who makes it out of the primaries, we're hoping to be able to connect with the Democrat and Republican candidate, along with the independent runner, Mr. Greg Lopez, who we've interviewed before. We hope you enjoy this segment. We broke it up into two segments so you can actually get two podcasts into one episode and divide it up with your time. Listen closely. Make your decisions, because who runs the state of Colorado for the next 4 to 8 years is liable to have to turn around and dig through the swamp of the last 8 years and try to put some of the pieces of the puzzle back together to make Colorado what Colorado used to be, what Colorado needs to be, and get out of where Colorado has become. Thanks again. Well, we're here for another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and I am privileged and pleased to sit here with gubernatorial candidate Senator Barbara Kirkmeyer. And we've been talking back and forth for quite some time, but we didn't want to bug her during the legislative session with all the things that she has to do with that. But Senator Kirkmeyer is running for governor of the state of Colorado, and it's been a pretty tight race to start with over the course of the last several months. There's a lot of people that have bailed out of things, but Senator Kirkmeyer, appreciate you getting on. Would you mind introducing yourself, giving us a little bit of background, and then we can get into some of the nuts and bolts and into the weeds of what it takes to run for governor of the state of Colorado and why you think we need to do something different.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this with you and have this sit-down conversation. I greatly appreciate it. So, hey, I am a fourth-generation Coloradoan. I grew up on a dairy farm in North Jefferson County. I eventually owned my own dairy farm, started my own small business, was minding my own business, raising a couple of kids, a couple of girls. And then I had this county commissioner who decided to tell me that I didn't matter and the things that were going on in the county, that I should just learn to live with it, and told me that I was chasing windmills. And I thought, you're going to be damn sorry when I catch one of those windmills. So I ran against him and I became a county commissioner. I won by 400 votes. Man, did I have a stomach ache after that election. But anyways, I won by 400 votes, and that's what started me off in public service. It wasn't something that I thought I would do. Again, I had a business. I had a dairy farm. I'm raising a small young family. But anyways, got involved and really enjoyed being a county commissioner. I served for a total of 20 years, served 8 years, then went off the board because of term limits. So I honored my term limits and went and worked for Bill Owens, Governor Owens, and eventually became the executive director of the Department of Local Affairs. And then after that was over, basically got fired when the next governor came on because they were Democrat. And after that, I went back to being a county commissioner because it's a great place to serve the people in your community, and you can really just get down to it. And I was able to lead my county to zero debt, built the only county highway in the state of Colorado, lowered the mill levy, cut taxes, cut regulations. It was going well, and my term was up, and I was thinking I was going to leave and just go volunteer and do some other fun stuff. And instead, Jared Polis happened, and he decided to go after oil and gas and go after agriculture, which are two of the biggest economies in the state of Colorado, but they're huge for my county as well. And I thought, that's it. I've had enough. I'm going to run for state senate. And so here I am 6 years later. I've been a state senator, and the last 4 years I have been on the Joint Budget Committee. So that's a little bit about me, and just kind of gives you my background.
So you had mentioned the state budget committee,
Mhm.
joint budget committee. So can you give a little bit of an insight to the layman of what that is, and is that something you're elected and appointed to, you volunteer for? But give us a little bit of rundown, please.
It's a volunteer sort of kind of thing, but you have to get elected in the Senate. So my own caucus has to, they appoint, they elect someone to be on the Joint Budget Committee. So I have been honored to be able to serve on the Joint Budget Committee. I've gotten there, let's see, one, two. Two times they've elected me to serve on the Joint Budget Committee. So the Joint Budget Committee, just kind of as a FYI, it's a 6-member committee, and we literally write the budget for the state of Colorado. That is by the Constitution, a legislative branch requirement that we pass a balanced budget. It's in our Constitution. And so there are 6 members, three Senate members, 3 House members. Majority party gets to pick 2 members. So we're a 4-2 committee, 4 Democrats, 2 Republicans. And starting about the first week or so in November, second week in November, and there we start working full time, and it takes all the way through April for us to get the budget ready to go and across the street to the other 94 legislators, for them to put their fingerprints on it and to pass what's called the long bill or the budget.
And so is that something that the governor actually has a significant input in, or is it his divisions of government, or how does that work?
Sure. The governor has the responsibility to present a balanced budget request to the legislative branch, so to the Joint Budget Committee. And I remind him every year that it's just a request. So we don't have to live by it. He doesn't get to write the budget. But as governor, though, you do have the role of really working with the Joint Budget Committee, working with the legislative branch to get a budget in shape. And then the governor is the one who signs obviously signs the long bill. So he could veto, he can line item veto or the budget, or maybe I should say she could, can line item veto in the budget. And, but the governor, it's bill. So the governor has the opportunity to either sign it or veto it. And if he vetoes it, and it's too late in the session and we can't override his veto, then we come back because we have to have a balanced budget. It's a constitutional amendment.
So when you say you come back, then you'd have to come back like what, in August, September, October or something?
Oh, no, no, no. We have to come back before the end of the fiscal year. So
Okay.
our fiscal year for state government ends on June 30th. We're not like on a calendar year, like normal people are or
Hmm.
business are. We go from July 1 to June 30th. And so, no, we have to get it done before the next fiscal year. It has to be a balanced budget. So
So that's
that's
a
a
challenge in
constitutional
itself.
mandate. Yeah, it is. But I would say, I mean, we're in the minority. I'm in the minority not only on the Joint Budget Committee, but within the House and the Senate. We are one party control. Democrats run the House. They have the majority in the House, in the Senate, and then obviously they have the governor's office right now. But I'm working to fix that and get that changed.
So from your perspective, Senator, do you think that during the last 8 years, 7.5 years, that there's been um, more trials and tribulations of trying to turn around and balance the budget and deal with the things that Colorado has had to deal with?
Oh, absolutely. Basically, what has happened over the course of the last 8 years, again, one party control, is we've had a crisis of priorities and we've had a spending issue. We don't have a revenue issue; it's a spending issue, and we have overspent year over year. And it started all the way back in March of 2021, when the Joint Budget Committee, we get this forecast and we know where we're at with regard to funding and the budget and appropriations and all of that good stuff. And at that point, we knew what it's called a structural deficit. And think of it this way, that, the parents were going out of town. So they gave their kids the credit cards and said, okay, you can go buy groceries and you can go buy the things that you absolutely need to do. But Instead, the kids went out and did all this one-time spending and maxed out the credit cards. In our case, the kids are the Democrats, and they've maxed out our credit cards and they've overspent. They started programs, they started new offices. We've created a new department was created, a new administration was created. I mean, all sorts of things were created, and they were supposed to be some of those things were supposed to be one time, and they've been ongoing. So that's the issue that we've had. Basically, we have overspent, and we need to stop our overspending. And so, as a minority member on the Joint Budget Committee, I work very diligently to start curtailing and curbing our spending. We have done some of that, but we haven't done enough, and we need to continue to make more cuts.
For people that don't fully comprehend the logistics of state government, and not that I'm a Rhodes Scholar, but with us having lobbying representation and being at the Capitol
Yeah,
regularly, we have a little bit better of an idea. But when people look at things not getting accomplished, or maybe not things happening the way that they should, is it reasonable to expect that it would be a lot easier if there was a little bit more color in the crayon box and it wasn't so blue on one side and so little red on the other side?
absolutely. Absolutely. It would be great if we had truly a check and balance between the executive branch and the legislative branch. And again, that's part of the reason why I'm running for governor is so that we get that check and balance. Because as the legislative branch writes the budget, we have to budget to current law. So, in other words, if a bill is passed, and I think, keep in mind, they're in the majority, so they get to pass all sorts of things. If a bill is passed and it has $1 million fiscal note on it, says they're starting this new program. It's going to cost us $1 million every year. And then we're going to grow that by inflation every year, kind of thing, right? We have to budget that $1 million. But the governor in the executive branch does not have to spend the $1 million. And that's what I can do as a governor to whip our budget into shape, make sure that we stop the overspending, make sure we, take the credit cards away from the kids basically and say stop the overspending. And I can whip the budget into shape by merely cutting spending in areas, unlike what the Democrats did. I don't know if everybody remembers, but last year we had a special session after, the federal government passed HR1, which is also known as the Big Beautiful Bill. And during that special session, we didn't do anything, and we didn't have the ability to because the governor kind of gets to set the agenda for the special session. Didn't allow us to cut spending, but we spent 6 days of increasing taxes to work to balance the budget. And we increased taxes, in this case, on the backs of business. And it was like to the tune of $252 million. And they actually ended up making our budget situation worse. So, as governor, I'll be able to whip our budget into shape. I know how to do it. I know where the waste is. I know where the mismanagement is. And there's a lot of it in this department and in this administration, within state government here. So, I know how to eliminate the waste. I know how to make government more efficient, prioritize, those things that are core government services, those things that we can't do for ourselves, and get our budget whipped into shape.
Well, you kind of answered some of my next question, which would have been, why would you want to get into that position? And I think that being as diligent as what you have been, and the background that what you've brought to this, it explains why you're so interested and concerned with this at the same time.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. They just keep overspending and they meaning the Democrats, they keep going back and saying, instead of prioritizing what we should fund, like education, like healthcare, our judicial system, the Department of Corrections. We want to make sure we have prisons, that we keep people in jail that need to be in jail. Instead of funding those things first, they fund like a lot of pet projects or a lot of small programs that start adding up to where we end up being, you know, $1 billion short, where we have to go in and look for cuts. Where we maxed out that credit card kind of thing. They started programs that were supposed to only be one-time programs, and they're not. They're ongoing programs. So we've made cuts in the budget, and but we haven't made enough cuts, and we didn't for about until this year, for this next budget year, is where we stop adding a lot of new programs back in, or stop adding more dollars to programs. Even last year, when we had a $1.2 billion shortfall going into the next budget year, we had to go find this in cuts. But we also have revenue still coming in. We're not in a recession. But this year we finally said, okay, as a joint budget committee, I mean, it was tough, but we made some cuts to programs. and programs that are no longer necessary anymore and eliminated those. And you do it a million bucks at a time. And I know that that's a lot of money. And believe me, I think it's a lot of money. But when you're trying to find $1 billion, it takes a lot of cuts.
Over the course of the last 7.5 years, this current administration has taken on some things that maybe Colorado as a whole didn't fully support, and specifically mentioning wolves.
Yeah.
If you look at the wolf vote that happened and look at the conundrum of discussions and management that has gone on since then, whether it's undermining, whether it's manipulation, whatever anybody wants to call it, and it's not just a Democrat or Republican thing, but that won by such a minimal margin.
Yeah.
Do you see things that are coming from the sportsman side of things, the agriculture side of things, that maybe that's coming to fruition as far as the concerns that were brought to the people that voted against wolves and the other people that are starting to see maybe it wasn't all a bed of roses when they were actually voting for wolves?
Exactly. I do see some of that, but the problem is, again, we're in the minority. As Republicans, we're in the minority. But on the Joint Budget Committee, using what influence I have and working with my other Republican member, Representative Taggart, we were able to get a pause on the funding of any more introduction of wolves. We started it last year and we firmed it up this year. And then Senator Catlin, Senator Roberts carried a bill to further ingrain that in statute. So, but we were able to pause the funding on the introduction of more wolves. And it was a hard push, but we were able to get there within the budget. And then, once we as a joint budget committee put that in the budget, it goes across the street to the other 94 legislators. So there's a total of 100 legislators. It goes across the street and there was a lot of discussion about whether or not to keep it in, how we amend it, what should we do. The House actually made some amendments to the budget that were not very favorable, at least from my perspective, and trying to pause introduction of wolves. But we came back and we were able to argue with our colleagues that we needed to stop the funding of any more introduction of wolves. And I think we met, as governor, I'll make sure that we don't spend any more dollars on introducing any more wolves. We've got grave issues in this state. And, my background in agriculture, having a dairy farm, I sure can feel for the ranchers and, in our mountain communities. They're not only trying to continue their ranching and their cattle operations, and they've had this wolf introduced now into their area, and it's causing great concern to them, but it's also impacting, and I didn't realize this until I went and met with some of the folks that are greatly impacted by the wolf being introduced in their areas, but it's impacting our wildlife corridors and impacting the hunting that's going on, which is part of the other way that they make a living so that they can survive through their ranching and keep their ranch in place. So it just makes sense to me. We have met the will of the voters. It just said we had to introduce wolves by December of 2023. We did that. And Kathleen Curry is the one who sent me that citation and statute. So it was great to have that. So I thank her all the time for it. We've had great discussions over it. But we've met that obligation and now it's the time we need to manage what is going on. And, we have not paid ranchers for their loss in the manner that we should have. And when a wolf is killed, like a small calf or a cow or anything of that nature, we should be putting that wolf down and moving on. So that's where I'm at as governor as well.
So, Senator, have you been outreached by the agriculture community, the stockmen growers, the cattlemen association, the wool growers, about wolves specifically, or just about management of wildlife resources as a whole?
Um, Both, but mostly about the wolves, because that has been, I would say, the biggest issue in the last couple of years here from the agriculture community. I've had a lot of outreach from them. I've met with quite a few folks. When I was over in Montrose and Delta, I've met with folks there. I know some of the ranchers and such in the Gunnison area. Met with like ranchers, and gosh, they have one of the most beautiful ranches I've seen. It's in Eagle and Route County with Susan Nottingham, and really had those sit down discussions about what is going on, how they fear for their safety, how it's impacting their ranching business, and then also, like I said, the wildlife corridors and even the the hunting. hunting that they have going on their properties as well, and hindering that part of our economy as well, but also that part of their livelihood as well.
Do you think that um, do you think that the story has fully been told about the current governor's input or uh, a lot of people call it manipulation on the introduction of wolves and the oversight that has happened from the administration on down to the Department of Natural Resources and Colorado Parks and Wildlife? And that's
No.
speculation, but do you think that that's
Yeah.
been the case?
No, I don't think the full story has been told. I think this governor and this administration is really good at gaslighting the public. And they, I mean, remember the whole video of where they're letting out the wolves, and he does this whole press release and this whole press, kind of package, if you will, like this is the most wonderful thing in the world kind of thing. And it doesn't even talk about how it's damaging our agricultural economy, how it's damaging, like I said, the wildlife corridors and our hunting, the the livelihood that folks have with regard to hunting and then allowing for that hunting to occur. And I have heard from people that they fear for their lives when they're invaded by the wolves, and that's how it feels to them. It's an invasion. And then just even over the course of the last few months, actually it's been probably 8 or 9 months now, working and hearing from the federal government, the federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who sent a letter to the state of Colorado and said, you know what? You're not following our management agreement. You've got until the middle of January to get your act together and give us records of what you're doing. How are you paying out the deprecation? What are you doing to manage these wolves? The other thing I heard too, and when I started getting involved in this, like on the Joint Budget Committee, to pause the funding, I also heard from folks that it's these other states don't want to send wolves our way because we've mistreated the wolves. And I'm like, wow. So it's like we're getting hit coming and going kind of thing. And yet you would have never known that from the governor. He's never made mention of it. That, the Indian tribes in Oregon and Washington will not send wolves to Colorado because of our mismanagement of the wolves. You don't hear those stories. You don't hear the stories about, how people are fearful, like their kids can't play out in the yard basically any longer on their ranch kind of thing because wolves have gotten that close to their house and killed small calves, that type, those types of things. So, no, I think this administration has done a remarkable job of keeping all of these things to themselves and gaslighting the state, and the people who live in this state.
Well, and that's been the assumption from the agriculture community and obviously the sportsmen and women community. And I know that the General Assembly has had to deal with a variety of different things since 2020, since Prop 114 had actually passed. Let me ask you, if you were governor and you came in and this was still in the middle of the process, I mean, it's not like it's a done deal. Do you have
Yeah.
any recommendations that you would do right off the bat to work with the Department of Natural Resources and CPW? Because obviously you're going to have a tremendous amount of pull or influence to be able to put people in place. What do you
Yeah.
think needs to be done to kind of set the record straight? Maybe start over, maybe not. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. The voters of Colorado voted for wolves in the state. We realize that. It's been mandated. Now, has it been done fully in compliance? I don't know. Has it been done fully with transparency and accountability? I would say probably not. But if you become governor, what would be the first or second things that you'd like to do with the Department of Natural Resources outside of hiring a new director, probably executive director, but to help the people on the ground and still look at the conservation side of things of what wolves we have here and how to turn around and appropriately manage them in some science-based manner?
So, a couple of things. One, already on the Joint Budget Committee pushed for and got an additional like 500 to $600,000 out of the wildlife cash fund to ensure that there are more range riders out in the area. That was something that I heard when I was out talking to the ranchers about the problems that they were facing. We would also make sure that there is a process that is in place that is fair to the ranchers who have lost cattle and calves to wolves, that they are getting compensated appropriately. And I know that's after the fact for them, but it's extremely important that that's in place as well. First thing on day one, I plan on looking at all of the boards and commissions that we have in this state. There are over 300 of them. And the governor gets to appoint those people who are on those boards and commissions. So that includes the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Board. And, I plan on asking some folks to resign from the board. I'll do that in a polite way first. If that doesn't work, we'll figure out how to get them off the board and get people in place that are experts, that have an understanding of how this program has been implemented on the ground and the damage that it has caused, and make sure that we have people who understand that, and make sure that we pull back some of those regulations that they put in place, some of those rules and guidance that they put in place, and make sure that we are working with the ranchers to ensure, one, that they're getting paid appropriately for any loss, two, that there are range riders, three, that we work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to make sure that we are following our management agreement with them. Those are things that will take place. And yes, the governor appoints the cabinet member, the executive director of the Department of Natural Resources, who then turns around and appoints who is in charge of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife board, that director. But they're supposed to work with the commission. And I will make sure that that happens. It'll be somebody that actually has an understanding of how this program has not been done correctly and how we're going to do it in the correct manner so that everyone can feel safe in their community, that ranchers aren't constantly worried about their animals, and that we're protecting our wildlife corridors and at the same time allowing for hunting in those areas as well.
CBW Commission has a interesting dynamic to it because of the makeup, and especially since Parks and Wildlife merged back in the early 2000 teens, 2011,
Yeah.
2012. But given the fact that there's a Department of Agriculture Commission as well, and you have a commissioner there, is there something there that you see that maybe needs to be broke and fixed, or is it just broke and it can't be fixed? Because you've got representation in two different agencies, so to speak, with the Department of Agriculture representatives. And it seems like there's a little bit of confusion or maybe consternation from the ag community itself. Is there something there that you think needs to be adapted or modified a little bit because you have so much crossover between agriculture and wildlife management?
Absolutely, there is. And I think it is broke. I think there's like this lack of communication, or maybe, quite frankly, they're carrying out what the governor tells them to do. These people are direct reports to the governor. They answer to the governor. And so there needs to be better coordination and communication between both of those departments, the Department of Natural Resources, the Parks and Wildlife Commission, and the Agricultural Commission, and the Department of Agriculture. There needs to be better coordination, more communication. I know there have been some programs in the Department of Agriculture that have been funded to assist with, the introduction of wolves, and then after the fact, when the wolves have killed cattle and what goes on from that nature. But I think there needs to be better coordination. And as governor, I'm going to insist, that my departments actually talk to one another and work together, especially on this issue. Quite frankly, on lots of issues. But there's been a lot of silos that have been created in state departments and in this administration. And I will unwind those silos, and we'll have full communication, people working together for the betterment of all Coloradoans in our state.
Senator, you mentioned something that there's like 300 boards and commissions or different
Hmm.
positions for people to realize that a governor is in charge of. Now, maybe he doesn't make all of the positional appointments, but he hires the people or he appoints people, and then they appoint other people. Is that correct?
No, actually, the governor is in charge of making all of the appointments to those boards and commissions. Now, what happens is, because I've been in this position as an executive director of department, any boards that are within the executive director, any boards within that department. So within the Department of Natural Resources, like the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Board, or in the Department of Health, the Water Quality Board. The executive director has a responsibility to help recruit or find people that would be on those boards. And I would insist that we get subject matter experts. I mean, the Department of Agriculture, maybe we should have agricultural people who are giving suggestions about who should be on that board and giving us, you know, uh, hearing their voice as well as to who should be on that board. Similar to Parks and Wildlife. We have a lot of people, farmers, ranchers, but other people that are involved in Parks and Wildlife as well that I think should be, that we should tap into. Let's tap into their experience, tap into their knowledge about who would be good appointees on these boards, and really truly work together. I think what has happened in this administration, we've had the other side, the other special interests who have had way too much pull and influence on who sits on some of these boards. I mean, we've had people who are, very pro wolf, anti farmer, who's sitting on the Parks and Wildlife Board. We had, people who are anti agriculture sitting on the agricultural board. I mean, the list kind of goes on, but we're going to revamp the boards and commission in the state of Colorado, and we'll start working on that and be prepared on day one to get going.
So you mentioned that, and in the, in your time as a senator, or even underneath the Owens administration, can you recall a time when there's been so much consternation or contention over appointees, like what just happened, or even what the governor had to observe during a couple other appointments on the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission? There was a big hoopla here back in April, and two of those individuals were not confirmed, and they stepped down. They went through from the Senate Ag Committee with unfavorable recommendations, and they ended up stepping down for whatever reason. They did it on their own, or this governor asked them to do so. But I mean, have you ever seen such turmoil of appointments? That, I mean, if I'm kind of looking at it, that if the right type of people were picked for the right reasons, they shouldn't have
Yeah.
that big of a problem, should they?
No, they should not. I mean, if you remember, like even we had a Department of Agriculture Commission board member who made some very disparaging comments about agriculture and about farmers. I think she called us all stupid or something of that nature, but made some very disparaging comments. And the public and the agriculture community really came forward and pushed and ended up getting her removed. I mean, she put comments on social media platforms, which was just outrageous. And you're right. I mean, no, when I worked for Governor Owens, I don't recall that we had issues getting people appointed. I mean, maybe there were some, I don't know. But again, we brought everybody to you need to bring everybody to the table. And I think that's what Governor Owens was very good about. It's looking at experts in their field and getting those folks on those boards and commissions and getting recommendations from people who are going to have to work with them and who are going to have to deal with and implement any rules or regulations that they pass. But you're right. Not only did we have issues with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, and there were it was a couple of cycles. We had issues where they were getting unfavorable recommendations from the Agriculture Committee. And keep in mind, that's a majority of Democrats. So
Hmm.
I would say to the communities, especially on the Western Slope, you have done a great job of informing your state senators about the folks that are being appointed or hoping to be appointed to like the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, because we've gotten lots of emails, lots of information as state senators, and you've done a really good job of keeping your legislators informed, and they have led the charge, even though they are Democrats. They have quite frankly helped lead the charge. It takes 18. They've got to get to 18 to be able to get someone appointed. And when they know they're close or when they can't get there, I think the governor just he won't push. They won't push the appointments on the Senate floor. If they can't get them out of committee even. But we also had a Department of Transportation, a transportation commissioner, who didn't make it either. Just this last go around, I think there were 3 or 4 of them, and I haven't seen that in a while. So yeah,
It it sh-
pretty
it
amazing.
it shows maybe the contention that is there, especially when, I mean, the general public looks at this, especially when you have a pretty much Democratic House and a Democratic Senate and a
Yeah.
Democratic governor. Um, if you look backwards, do you think that there could have been something done differently from the time that this current governor took office to maybe make things a little bit better, a little bit more um, technical, to where people could think that they could cross the aisle and try to work with some of these individuals?
Yeah, I think the governor could have done a better job of reaching out to the community, whether, it was the agricultural community, the sportsman community, especially when he's looking at who's going to be on that board, on that Parks and Wildlife board. And then I think the Department of Natural Resources and the Wildlife Commission, along with the Parks and Wildlife um, office there, could have done a better job of working out their management plans with regard to the introduction. I mean, when people are basically begging you not to introduce any more wolves because it's already been so disastrous, you would think that they would take pause and that they would step back and start really maybe thinking, well, maybe our management plans we haven't executed them, but they didn't. They just kept pressing forward. And I think that has a lot to do, with the governor's partner who was pushing forward on getting the wolves introduced. And, I think the governor as well, just was not listening to his constituency about how the mismanagement of this program was causing really severe damage for farmers and for everybody, quite frankly, in the state of Colorado. And so, yeah, I think they should have put a pause on it. Um, like I said, when I went and spoke with farmers and ranchers in the area that were in areas where the wolves were being introduced, I mean, they were telling me very specific, like, can you get more range riders? And so I went back as a member of the Joint Budget Committee. And when the Department of Natural Resources came in front of us and the Division of Wildlife, Parks and Wildlife came in front of us, it's like, look, here's what they're saying. You're not hiring enough range riders, and they're not, they're not covering at the right time, and they're not in the right areas. It's like you need more of them, and so really push for them to use like the wildlife cash fund to ensure that they got more range riders in place. To protect folks and help out and start following through on their management program that they were putting in place. And then even with the depredation costs and not fully funding individuals who have lost animals, and making them do all these outrageous things. I mean, just listening to Susan Nottingham talk about it and the carcass removal and just the lack of understanding of how it works on the ground by the Division of Parks and Wildlife and even the Wildlife Commission was astounding to me. That's when the governor should have said, and if I was governor, I would have said, look, we're pausing. First of all, we would have never done all of this, but we would have paused it. Our management program was not working. We should have paused.
Yeah, if you listen to a lot of the things that the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission has had to deal with over the last 5 or 6 years specifically, and listen to the amount of times that those commissioners, not all of them, but most of them, I'm confused. I'm not sure what we're voting on. I'm not sure what we should do with this. Can you explain this, Mr. Attorney? I'm confused. Um, those are the ones that should be making the decisions and have the expertise. And I'm fearful, and I think it's a tragedy myself, that when people sit on a panel or a commission and they're supposed to bring the intelligence and the expertise of their appointments, and then they go against the agency itself and they don't actually solve any problems, they actually make it worse because they're not listening to the experts, they're not listening to the facts and the data. That in itself creates, I think, a lack of respect and a lack of trust, not just for that commission, but also the people that are on the ground, the ones that have the badges and the insignias and the guns and
Yeah.
the um, credibility and the kudos. I mean, we've got 350 legitimate biologists within Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I don't know why we have to listen to commissioners that don't know what they're talking about when they're confused on specific subjects and they were appointed for those specific reasons. I would hope, and I think that the majority of the general public would hope, unless they have a vendetta that they just want to turn around and disrupt and bankrupt the agency, I would hope that the next governor, likely you, the next governor would have an opportunity to make those decisions and make those decisions informed, but also rely back on the agency to make those decisions back to and make the recommendations to the governor. Because I don't think that Barbara Kirkmeyer knows every single thing about wolves or prairie dogs or swift fox or red-tailed hawks or humpback chubs or anything else. I would expect the governor to come in and do what's necessary to make the executive decision when it's necessary. But when you have a commission, if it was done right, and you've got 350 biologists and you've got scientists in the field and 130 game wardens who are all biologists, I would like to see that the governor turns around and makes that decision after they come to them or him or her and says, hey, we have this going on. What do you think? But I don't think that's been the case for the last 6.5, 7 years.
I don't think so either. I think this governor has purposefully politicized his boards and commissions. And so they're making political decisions versus, decisions that are based on science, based on good data, based on recommendations that are coming from the experts. They're just making political decisions, and that's a bad thing. And the governor should have stopped it. If I were governor, I would have stopped it. And I would have never let a board get that far out of control. We would have reined it in, and I would have asked people to resign. But first of all, I don't think I would have appointed anybody who wants to politicize, the board and commission that they're on. That's wrong. That shouldn't be happening.
So, with the technical expertise that you have on a variety of different subjects, including the budget and just state government as a whole, you becoming a governor, and given the fact that we've got water issues and we've got compact issues and we've got habitat
Yeah.
issues and wildlife crossing issues and oil and gas issues, do you think that you got the technical experience and expertise to be able to on the federal side when necessary and have that open door policy at this point in time to be able to turn around and say, hey, we need to turn around and figure out something to do with this that affects not only the state of Colorado and the residents, but other states as well. It affects our economy. It affects our habitat. Do you have the ability to have that kind of open door policy at this point in time, do you believe?
Absolutely. I'm more of a collaborative leadership type person. I grew up in local government on a board of 5 county commissioners, and we had this rule or this saying that I kind of started, and then we all jumped on it. And it's before you count to 3, you need to talk to all 5. Right. And you come up with better decisions. You come up with solving the issues, when everybody gets to bring their expertise to the table. Do I have the ability as a leader to make that final decision? Absolutely. But I'm going to rely on the experts. I'm going to rely on people who are boots on the ground that know how these things are being implemented, these rules, regulations, how they're being implemented and where they need to change. And when it comes to water, my gosh, it is probably one of the most important issues in the state of Colorado. We should have been doing more water storage over the course of the last 10, 20 years instead of listening to special interest groups who just wanted to stop everything. And here we are now in a severe drought time when we were still letting too much water go down the river. And now there's not just going to be enough water that's, in our state for anybody, basically in our state and then any of the lower basin states. But we are going to have to, we should have been doing water storage. We should have been the Northern Integrated Supply Project, which is up in my neck of the woods, up in, for water in northern Colorado, has been in the works for, gosh, over 20 years. And just now they're getting to a point where they're going to be able, I think, in this next year, start construction. We should have been looking at how do we increase the storage capacity in our reservoirs instead of just letting them be. We should have been looking at can we do underground water storage in our aquifers and and use that as one of our other ways of storage. I think the other thing that people don't understand is, and I've heard this in other forums with my opponents, where they talk about the compact. And at one point, someone talked about opening up the compact, and I was speaking to a couple people after him, and I said, "No way, no how are we ever opening up that compact because Colorado will lose." And I'm a governor to go fight for Colorado. So I think the governor, when I'm governor, I will be totally more engaged in and watching what happens with our water issues in the state. It's extremely important to us. And whether it's the Colorado River Compact are, looking at all of the river basins, whether it's Nebraska trying to come in and do eminent domain in my state. I don't think so. I don't think so. For the federal government, the last thing we want is them involved in the compact any more than they already are. Because, if they're going to say that we have to do some measures to dry up or, do some mandated cuts, no, 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 no. We're going to follow the compact and make sure that we have the water that we're supposed to have. And at the same time, we need to understand that water is a private property right. And we need to protect that private property right, especially under the Constitution, to make sure that we aren't infringing on agricultural users' water rights as well. And then I know I'm kind of going on here a little long, but one other thing that I did as a state legislator is I carried the dredge and fill bill. Now, keep in mind, I'm in the minority, and I introduced that bill after the Sackett decision, with regard to wetlands in our state. And this administration wanted to go right back to where the EPA was. Um, and I introduced a bill all by myself for the most part on the Senate side, and was ended up being able to combine bills, but get what we needed to get to protect water rights in the state of Colorado and make sure that they were exempting out agriculture, making sure that they weren't going any farther than what the U.S. Supreme Court said within the Sackett decision, and our definition of wetlands and what does adjacent mean kind of thing. So Water is extremely important. Was very engaged. I've owned water. I understand about water in our state of Colorado, and I will be very engaged as a governor to make sure that we are protecting the water that is in our state and making sure that people's rights are not infringed upon.
Can you give a brief synopsis on is there a compliance issue when it comes to the compact?
Compliance in what way?
As far
Our side.
as far as litigation, or is there anything that's going to happen that people need to be aware of that maybe is beyond the control of any one individual, but where Colorado has to continually worry about that if we keep going down through these type of winters and we don't have a snowpack and we don't have good moisture and everybody else wants their share or maybe more than their share, is there a compliance issue that we need to figure out a way to address in some capacity?
I just really think we're gonna have to figure out how to address water storage, water rights in our state, in a little bit in a better fashion than we do, but we really are going to have to guard against the federal government getting involved within the compact and within our water rights. I think there is gonna have to be negotiations and there's gonna have to be work done with the lower basin states. But you know what? I don't feel bad for California. They've got about 840 miles of beachfront property of one of the largest bodies of water, on this planet. And maybe they should be looking at other things like desalination and figuring out how to use that water instead of thinking that we're going to keep giving them more water from Colorado. That's not going to happen. I am going to be a governor looking out for Colorado and Colorado water first.
Have you heard from the Western Slope agriculture producers or the city and counties over there about the water issue, that's a major concern to them as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a major concern throughout Colorado. I don't know that people are as greatly aware of it, especially those who live in urbanized systems. I mean, they don't know necessarily where the milk comes from. They just think they go to the grocery store and get it. And they think every day when they wake up, they're going to be able to turn their water on and it's not going to be a problem. Those of us who live out in the country and grew up on a farm and, whether it's Western Slope or the Eastern Plains or even up north, we understand the value of water and we understand what it's like to not have enough water to water our crops and grow. I mean, I'm greatly worried about what's going to happen with our agricultural industry with this drought. When we don't have enough hay to feed the cattle, or we're not growing enough corn to feed the cattle, then what happens to our agricultural industry? It's going to be a tough year, and I'm hoping we can get by. But it's also going to be tough for our municipalities who have done their water planning with regard for residential water, and they've already started, conservation measures, telling people they can only water so much. They've already changed within their planning to put in exerscape, and low water, drought tolerant plants, that type of thing, putting in so much bluegrass everywhere. So things like that have already been happening, but just maybe not enough. And I think more and more of that is going to happen in the state of Colorado. But I don't feel bad that Arizona can't fill up all their pools. That's not my first concern. My first concern will be Colorado, making sure that we have our water and, that we make sure that we have water for agriculture in the state of Colorado.
Well, Senator, there's a learning curve for being a governor. There's a learning curve for being a legislator. There's a learning curve for being a county commissioner. Obviously, it's got to be worse for a governor because you have so many other things that are being thrown at you that you're responsible for as opposed to just having input in. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, to some degree, there's a big difference between a legislator and a governor, but there isn't as big a difference between a county commissioner and a governor. County commissioners run all the same departments. Counties implement a lot of state programs. I think that's part of the reason why I do so well on the budget. I've run programs like in the Human Services Department. I understand about transportation because I served on the State Transportation Advisory Committee for 20 years and chaired it for 8 years, kind of thing. Um, you know, so all of those things, leading up to what I've done as a county commissioner or a business owner or being an executive director of a department have led up to where I have a proven track record of getting the job done, but a proven track record of governing in this state. No other candidate, Democrat or Republican, has the type of experience that I have in governing. And we truly need a governor that knows how to govern. We have not had one for the last almost 8 years now. Jared Polis, I mean, I don't dislike Jared Polis, but I don't think he's done a good job. But Jared Polis came from a legislative background, and he didn't have didn't have the experience that I have had leading a county for 20 years, leading my county to zero debt. I understand about property taxes. I mean, the list just goes on. I would put my track record of delivering for the people, not only in my county but for the state of Colorado, up against anyone. It's tremendous what I believe that I have accomplished working with people to get the best opportunities that I can for people in the state of Colorado. But county commissioners, it's great training ground for to be a governor. Heck of a lot better than an attorney general or a U.S. senator, just so you know. But there's it's a steep learning curve, and I think part of the reason why I've done so well on the Joint Budget Committee is because of those years of being a county commissioner, and then also coming at it from a business perspective as well. And then my understanding of agriculture in the state of Colorado. I think those things have made a difference.
You mentioned in one of the previous comments about the urban rural side of things. Can you
Hmm.
emphasize? Can you give us a synthesis, a synopsis on what people talk about the urban rural divide, and from a legislative standpoint, how that has been maybe enhanced over the course of the last 7 or 8 or 10 years, because we have such a growing population. Look, we're all residents of the state of Colorado. Not everybody
Exactly.
knows everybody else's business, and they don't know everybody else's lifestyle and the needs to be able to turn around and do things. Can you give us a little bit emphasis on what you would do to try to correct what you think is the urban rural divide, and maybe explain just what you see and how it is?
I just think there's a lack of understanding of not only our way of life, but that, it's a means of, it's not just a job for us. It's our quality of life as well in the rural areas of the state. And I'll give you an example, and it's not just about agriculture. When I'm on the Joint Budget Committee and I am fighting for to ensure that we keep open the prisons that are in Rifle and Delta, for example. And when the recommendation comes in, like maybe we need to close those, and I'm like, "What? Are you nuts? We can't close those. We have economies, rural economies that are built around these." Types of industries and types of businesses that are going on in their community. And it's the healthcare industry and the higher education folks, and even the prison facilities. These are things that are placed out in rural Colorado, or not just rural Colorado, but out in rural Colorado, that means so much to that economy. And for a legislator just to come in and say, well, let's just cut that, let's just close that, let's not fund our higher education institutions, let's not fund necessarily providers in Medicaid, and then we have 25 counties that have maternal health care deserts. That means nowhere in that county can any woman get maternal health care. And it's like they just don't have an understanding of what it means. I mean, when we have legislators who are from the metro area that talk about consolidating school districts, because that was a discussion that came up 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm like, so instead of driving 100 miles to school, you want them to drive 250 miles to school? It's like they have no concept of how it works.
Mhm.
Um, you know, our healthcare system, our rural healthcare system, it's in crisis mode, and we need to figure out how to fund it. We cannot let it fail, or our whole system is in jeopardy. And I don't think they have an understanding of that either. In higher education, I worked and pushed for our rural institutions to get additional funding. That was 3 years ago. Every time the governor's budget request came in, he tried to cut it and eliminate it all the way up until just, this last April, he was still trying to cut it. And it's like, we're not cutting it. Those rural institutions are important to that whole area, whether, it's Adams State or Western State or Mesa University, and even the community college system that we have in this state. It has to be funded, especially for those individuals in rural Colorado. But they're so important to the fabric of that community. And I don't think that urban legislators or even this governor necessarily, because he doesn't visit us that much in rural Colorado. He doesn't visit the Eastern Plains either. Well, I know he doesn't visit the Western Slope that much, but they just don't understand the importance of those industries, those businesses, those services in those communities, and how important they are to the fabric of the community and holding it together.
You've seen a lot of that over the course of the last 8 years, and even before that to some degree. And I think it's actually
Mhm.
gotten worse. But where you hear ranchers or just people that work on the Eastern Plains or work on the Western Slope, that for them to get veterinary care is not as
Yeah.
easy as it is if you're in the town or the city. For them to get health care is not as easy. For them to get mental therapy care, it's not as easy. For them to get a variety of different services on a variety of different levels is not as easy. And it's not that it's not available, but I think that there's so few options that there's enough people that want those services and those goods that they have to end up going to the city for some reason. And more often than not, the people from the city on the Front Range, within 25 miles east or west of the I-25 corridor, typically go to those other locations that I'm mentioning, Western Slope, Eastern Plains, for recreation or for something other than services. They might go there
Yeah.
to get a four-wheeler fixed, or they might go there to get a gun fixed, or they might go there, whatever it might be. There's a lot of things that are cross-pollinated, but the bulk of the services are where there's a lot of people and there's the services that can make money out of. I mean, you have a hospital in about every community. Can that hospital service that entire community? No. But if you run up and down the I-25 corridor, you would think that we're building hospitals and for mass transit purposes or something, because there's a new healthcare facility or a new health service or a new hospital that's being built on top of each other that have hundreds, if not thousands, of beds and hundreds, if not thousands, of physicians or services. I think that those are things that people don't realize, and maybe they just take for granted until they actually need something. Is there something that could be done to help bridge that gap in some capacity that would be easier for the rural type people to be able to get those services?
It's back to the things that I mentioned about, what I have fought for and will continue to fight for. We need to make sure that services are available throughout the state of Colorado in a way that people can access them and get to them. And whether that's healthcare, whether that's having the opportunity to go to higher education institutions, or having, good paying jobs in their area that are related to, yes, the prison facilities. I had several people call me from Rifle or send me emails. And when I visited out there, and Delta, oh my gosh. And when I visited out there, one of this one individual came up to me and he goes, and he was, it was like the business people in the community were sending us emails, the Joint Budget Committee saying, "Oh my God, do not close the Delta facility. It will devastate our school system. It will devastate our community. I mean, how do we keep our community together if you close something that is such an economic driver in our community?" And I met a few business people and they knew who I was. And they're like thanking me. They're like, "You're the one who went to bat for us and fought for us." So that's what I will do as governor is, we've got to have those services out there. And even when I was executive director of the Department of Local Affairs, one of the projects that I assisted on was developing the public safety communication system, which is a critical infrastructure throughout the state. You can't just leave out rural Colorado. You can't leave out, beyond the Denver metro area and act like that's okay because it's not. And so it was a project that I had to build out, when you call 911, somebody actually answers and you're able to get resources to you that you need at that time. And I was able to get that built out, and it was a huge project, but we put up towers throughout the state of Colorado so that we would have that access to a public safety communication system throughout all of rural Colorado and throughout all of Colorado, and then made it interoperable and interconnected throughout the state. So that's something that I have fought for, whether I was a county commissioner or an executive director, and it is something I will continue to fight for, to make sure that those resources and those services are throughout all of the state of Colorado, not just in the really urbanized areas of our state.
Well, Senator, a lot of the listeners and viewers that we've got, the supporters that we have, which are actually growing substantially over the course of time, just because of the topics and subject matter that we're covering. Everybody doesn't hunt or fish, but everybody that hunts or fish breathes and eats and has to use water and uses the roads and worries about health care and all the other things.
Yeah.
Is there something there that you think that you can figure out a way to help bridge the gap on? Because Colorado's become a conundrum of a state when it comes to the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment on the federal Constitution, the American Constitution, is something to where Colorado has jumped into full force with the Democrat legislative body that we've got, that's been pretty much supported by the current attorney general, also running for governor, and this
Mhm.
particular governor that we've gotten and have had. Is there something that you would like to say to people that are either gun supporters, Second Amendment supporters, and the people that don't necessarily know about the Second Amendment, but need to understand why we have it and why we should be able to support it, and what could you do to be able to help bridge that gap?
Yeah, and that's going to be difficult because we've passed so many laws. Well, not me, but others have passed so many laws just in the last 6 years that I've been a state legislator. I mean, every year you think it's not going to get any worse, and then they just come back with even more laws to ban something, to put a waiting period in, to enhance the red flag law, and expand the red flag law. And I mean, the list just keeps going on and on. And requiring more permitting and things of that nature. And so, as governor, if I would have been governor during that time, I would have vetoed those bills. They would have never made it past my desk, kind of thing. But any time that we are infringing on the Constitution is a problem. And whether it's the Second Amendment or any of our amendments, any of our constitutional rights, we have to safeguard those. The Constitution, it's not only about protecting it, it's defending it as well. And I take my oath of office very seriously, and will do that. I think as governor, I mean, good grief, Dan, we have a ballot initiative to put into our Constitution the right to hunt and fish. That's just as crazy, isn't it? I mean, I'm voting for it. I support it. I signed the petition, that kind of thing. But how crazy is that we have to put something like that as simple into our Constitution, that we have the right to hunt and fish? And I'm not big on hunting. I like to fish. I've got 6 grandsons. They all love to go fish. They all like to hunt, and they all like to shoot the prairie dogs, which is a really good thing on my farm. And so because they're a nuisance. And anyways, that's probably not gonna go over well with some groups, but I'm sure it's fine with your group. But anyway,
Well, but let me interrupt real quick, and
yeah,
there's something there when you're talking about private property being able to turn around
exactly,
and protect your private property, and see how you
and
see
defend
fit on it.
yourself.
Yeah, and
Yes,
and I think that
yes,
people need to understand, and whether it's your right to protect your private property, and it's my right to turn around and own and possess a firearm as long as I'm not a convicted
absolutely.
felon. The rights of people, and you mentioned that this constitutional right to hunt and fish, Initiative 302, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because that's something to where if you hear what the opposition to that particular initiative is talking about, they're saying that it's already codified, it's already established, it's already in Colorado Revised Statutes under 33-1101. Look, you're a legislator. You know that things can be taken away and attempted to be taken away, just like what this commission has done, just like these
Yeah,
previous ballot initiatives have done, just like the legislature has had to deal with at different levels. The constitutional right to hunt and fish could be interpreted for a constitutional right for a lot of different things when people keep feeling like their lives have been infringed on and their rights or indoor privileges have been infringed on. I think that we shouldn't have to go down that road. But given the fact that the amount of attacks and the assaults that have come to us in the state of Colorado for the last 30 plus years, and specifically heavily over the course of the last 7 or 8 years, I
yeah,
think that it needs to happen in a manner to where it establishes a constitutional right, because it lays out some sideboards for the commission and the legislature, the General Assembly as a whole, to say, why are we looking at trying to ban beaver harvest or prairie dog harvest or mountain lion harvest? Why are we going back to the ballot to see if we could turn around and just take each one of those game species off the list for Colorado Parks and Wildlife to manage? The reason I mean it and say it like that is because if we keep going down that road, any group can bring anything out about oil and gas. Maybe it's roads and bridges. Maybe it's drinking Pepsi Cola on Sunday afternoon while walking your white Samoyed dog. I mean, it's the
yeah.
if anybody can think about it, somebody can bring it up and actually put it in there to take it away. And I'm hopeful that as we move forward in these conversations, no matter what the outcome is of the primary and the outcome of the governor's race, that people can see some levity and civility and decorum in some of these things to realize that it's not all about Republicans and Democrats. It's not all about independents. It's about the residents of the people of the state of Colorado that need to figure out a way that we have to live together. We have to rely on each other's resources. We have to rely on each other to be able to take care of each other's resources. And without legitimate governors and legislators and appointed individuals, it just becomes more and more convoluted and more of a confusing tactic for people to turn around and say, why is government so inefficient or ineffective?
Yeah. Well, and we have a state senator whose only mission is to carry every gun bill he can possibly think of and try and push it through.
Yeah.
And that's Senator Sullivan. And I understand he had a horrible tragedy with his son and in his family, and it would have been devastating. But his mission has been to take away our guns, to take away our right to bear arms, to protect ourselves, to defend our property, and that has been his mission. I can remember at one point filibustering and arguing on the Senate floor that because after every time there is a mass shooting, and no one wants to see any mass shooting, and a mass shooting is more than one. So anytime that happens, nobody wants to see that. No one wants to see that. But anytime that happens, they think another law is going to stop it. And so, they were talking, they talk about that on the Senate floor, the Democrats do. And we had a list of all of the legislation that had passed, this happens and we pass another law, and then it happens again, and then we pass another law. So obviously the gun is not violent. People are violent. It is not gun violence. It is people who are violent. And, continuing to take away our right to defend our property and defend ourselves is not the answer. I feel very strongly about that. Our Constitution is very clear that we will not infringe upon our right to bear and keep arms, yet we keep going after it. And I think, in a way, I appreciate that we have people who are so frustrated that they're willing to go put in our Constitution that we have the right to hunt and fish. But it just seems like, wow, how far have we gotten out of control where you have to do that, where it's not just a standard that we have that right to hunt and fish, that now we have to put it in the Constitution, almost like again in my book.
Mm-hmm.
But we do at this point because our state has gone way off track. It's gone way off course. We're going the wrong way, the wrong direction, and people are feeling that frustration. Whether it's in the right to bear arms and the Second Amendment, and, we're going to get folks who are going to argue with this on both sides of this issue, but it's a constitutional issue, and any time that people start infringing on our constitutional right, it's just nose under the tent kind of thing, and we need to put a stop to it. So we're going to have to probably use the ballot initiative for a while because as governor, I can't repeal laws. That's what the legislative branch does. They can write bills. They get to repeal laws. And I remind that of people who say, well, you're passing all these laws. And I said, some of those laws are to repeal other laws that I don't like, kind of thing, or that other people don't like, or to fix laws that are broken. And we've got to do things of that nature. So, if we can't get that happening because, we only have the governor's office and we don't control the House and we don't control the Senate, which I don't know how we're going to get there in anytime soon, then we're probably going to have to use the ballot to do things like say, we get to hunt and fish. Crazy, but that's what we're going to have to do.
That's a point that we're at in this point in time, I think. And
Yeah.
while people keep saying that it's already legal, we don't have to do that, and nobody's trying to take it away. Well, that's not been the case for the last 7 or 8 years for sure. Somebody's been trying to take it away. Somebody's been trying to undermine Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the managing agency. Somebody's been trying to manipulate the way that they do things because of the appointments on the commission. I want to switch gears real quick, Senator, and ask you if you had a chance and you become governor, tell us what the first 100 days are going to look like from a Barbara Kirkmeyer administration to be able to turn around and bring a level of civility and decorum. Because if that case happens, there's going to be a lot of spoiled cats out there turn around and saying that now the world's coming to an end. I don't think that anybody is smart enough to realize how volatile and how fragile this landscape has become until they've lived it. Give us an idea of what 100 days would look like under Governor Barbara Kirkmeyer.
Well, first of all, on day one, I'll be ready. I don't need on the job training. I've governed before. I've led my county, like I said, to zero debt, lowered property taxes, and cut spending and cut regulations. So that's what I'll be looking to do starting on day one. We'll look at those boards and commissions. We'll ask people, we'll be ready. I'll have my executive team that I appoint. All these executive directors that are there now, they'll be gone. We'll have new appointees, new cabinet members, and we'll have a mission to get our state back on track. With regard to the budget, it will take me about 6 months to whip the budget into shape. And really, it's about cutting the budget and cutting spending. And a governor can do that. And so I will do that. I'll get our budget into shape. That'll be the first thing. We'll stop this crisis of priorities. We'll start funding those things that are most important that people can't do for themselves. We'll have our priorities in line and we'll get that in shape. We'll be open for business on day one. I will, like I said, look at those boards and commissions and we will start having a list because I will have already worked with industries, whether it's the oil and gas industry, the agricultural industry, the hospital industry. We will already have a list of regulations that have been overburdensome, that are costing us too much money and making life unaffordable. And we will start working to tackle this unaffordability issue right on day one by looking at those regulations. And then we'll look at our tax structure and see and it may not necessarily be as much of the tax structure. I mean, I would love to lower. I mean, I had a bill to eliminate overtime tax, but again, the Democrats killed it. But we'll look at our tax structure and see where we can make changes. And most likely, it's going to be in those areas of all those additional fees that have been added on that make the cost of housing soar, make the cost of living go up. Looking at what the Public Utilities Commission did with the banning of natural gas, essentially in our state, that if our utility bills continue to climb, I don't know how we're ever going to be affordable. The price of energy, and then we will look at what we need to do to make sure and hold our education system accountable. In that first 100 days, we'll start talking about what do we need to change in our education system. I went back and made sure and followed our constitutional mandate to encourage or to require that we fund education as required under the Constitution. And we finally are now. But now we need to hold our education system accountable. Kids have got to be able to read in the third grade at a third grade level. Kids have got to be able to do simple eighth grade math by eighth grade. If we want to get people out of poverty, we've got to give them a great opportunity for an education and give them that great opportunity, that great education. So we'll start working on. I mean, I'm going to pull in those school board folks and those superintendents and start talking about, do we need to look at what they did in Mississippi and in Florida to start getting our kids to read in the third grade? Because this nonsense of where we have 60 to 70% of our kids not reading at a third grade level is appalling to me. And that is one thing that we have to tackle. I don't know if I can get that tackled in the first 100 days, but we certainly can lay the plan out for how we're going to do that and then start going after it and get it done.
We
And I
can.
missed one.
You
I
go
missed
right ahead.
Sorry, I just sit here thinking. And then there's the roads. I have a plan to fix our roads.
You and I were
And it
thinking on the
doesn't
same thing because I was going right
Oh,
down
okay.
there. So,
Okay, great. Because I saw it. I saw it coming. But no, I have a plan to fix our roads, and it doesn't include increasing taxes. I'm not about increasing taxes at all. We don't need to increase taxes. We just need to prioritize what we're doing and make sure that we are managing effectively and efficiently. And this is the worst managed administration that I've ever been around. But I do have a plan to fix our roads. We'll take money that we've already that's already accounted for that should be used for our roads. I'm for Prop 175. I think those at this point we don't put hardly any general fund dollars towards our roads, and we probably need to be doing that. But we need to get our roads fixed. We need to maintain safety in our road system, and we can do it. I have a plan, $6 billion in 4 years. Doesn't mean we increase taxes. It just means we're going to be lean, we're going to be mean, we're going to be efficient, and we're going to get it done.
if you have a chance, are you going to be willing to have open houses or some sort of discussion with the general public after you become governor? Because that's been a complaint that we've heard at multiple levels. It's like everybody puts somebody in the position, and then there's no chance to. It's like they sit on a throne somewhere. They never get a chance to turn around and talk to them at any level unless they're an elected official or an appointed official or a county representative or something. Would you be willing to have open houses at some point in time to turn around and try to get some feedback and maybe listen to the general public in different forums?
Absolutely. I love town hall meetings. I love the opportunity to go out and meet with folks and really just hear from them. So I hear what the concerns are. It's a lot better than polling because you're hearing face to face from people who are living these experiences and they're telling you, here's what's wrong and here's how it's impacting me and how can we fix this. Now, I can't guarantee that I can get everything fixed, but I certainly can be that governor that has an open door policy that you will have access to and that will listen to you and your concerns and your comments. And we'll see what we can do. We'll start working on things together. I did it as a county commissioner. I do it, as a state senator. I was a lot better at it when I was a county commissioner. I will do it as a governor. I'll be traveling around the state just like I am now, out talking to groups regardless of what who the group is. I will be a governor for everybody, but I'm really good at listening. And I may be pretty opinionated. I think I have a lot of good ideas, but I'm not narrow minded and I don't corner the market on all the good ideas. And there are a lot of people out there that got some great ideas that we just need to expand on and we need to have an understanding of and listen to. So absolutely, that's exactly what I would do. It it's it's kind of um, just so different for me because as a county commissioner, I mean, I was the one right off the bat instituted this whole public process, public comment process at our board meetings, right? Giving the people the opportunity we met as county commissioners, we met on Mondays and Wednesdays and gave people the opportunity to come to us and say, hey, here's a problem and we need you to work on it. And now we weren't able to solve the problem in that board meeting, but a lot of times we'd follow up with a work session, invite others to it, and then have that conversation and start talking about what the issue was and how we resolve it, and really listen to the people that we're supposed to be serving, and then acting on it as well. Not just it's not just hearing it; you've got to act on it as well. And I'll be that governor.
Senator, I know that you've got a full boat, and it'd be good to be able to turn on and reconnect at some point in time after the primary, and hopefully you're leading the charge on that side from the Republican side. What would you have to say? And I'll start to wrap things up because I know you've got to get up early in the morning, and so do I. But
Yeah,
what would you have to say to independents? They always hear about Republicans and Democrats, but the majority of the state is independent or unaffiliated. Is there something
yeah.
you'd like to turn around and try to get across to them and get them to understand that your expertise is on behalf of them? It's not just behalf of the Republican Party. It's not on behalf of just trying to do something for Republicans and Democrats. What would you like to say to independent voters?
I would say this. First of all, I'm going to be a governor for everyone in the state of Colorado. That's what we're supposed to do. I'm serving the people of the state of Colorado, and I hear your frustrations. You're right, Dan. More than 50% of the people who vote in this state are not Republican and they're not Democrat. They're unaffiliates. And they've been telling us now for the last year or so, at least, that we are going the wrong way. We're on the wrong track. We're in the wrong direction. So, what I would say to you is, I understand your frustration. I lived through it as well. I tell people the walls at the Capitol were made out of granite and marble, and it really hurts when you hit your head against one. And so, I can appreciate your frustration. I'm a fourth generation Coloradoan. This is my state. I love this state. I want to get it back on track. I know how to do it. I've governed. I have led, and cut property taxes in the state. And I know we're getting bombarded with taxes and fees, and we'll look to cut those as best as we can and eliminate those. And I want to hear from you what those are. And let's work on it. I will cut property taxes. I've learned to and have back the blue, working with law enforcement, making sure that we can provide for safety in our communities. And I'm hearing from folks, it's about the economy. It's about affordability. It's about feeling safe in your community. I've heard you. I know the frustration. There are things I've worked on either as a county commissioner or a state senator, and we can do so much more when I'm governor to make sure that you do feel safe in your community, that we do make your life better, and that things are more affordable, and that we protect our kids, and that we make sure, protect your kids, quite frankly, and we make sure that they're getting that education that they need so that we can lift them out of poverty if we need to, or lift them to something further in their lives and give them those opportunities that everybody deserves. And then lastly, I will get these roads fixed. I've been driving around the state and the roads are in horrible mess and people complain about them all the time. And I can tell you as a county commissioner, people would tell me how bad the roads are and we'd go fix those roads. And that's what I will do as a governor. But I'm open minded. I will listen to what you have to say. I will work. I have fought. I will roll up my sleeves to make sure that our kids, that you also have the opportunities that we should have. We deserve better in this state. One party control. The Democrats have made a mess. We're unaffordable. We're unsafe. We're unraveling. Our roads are horrible. We can get this fixed. I will tell you, I grew up on a dairy farm and come from a modest background. My job, I have 6 siblings. We all had jobs we had to do on the farm because that's how we made the farm work. My job was to feed the calves and to clean up a whole bunch of you know what. It turns out that that was really good training for a career in politics to clean up the mess. And that's what I will do as governor. And I'll be a governor for everyone.
Senator Kirkmeyer, I'm gonna give you 3 other questions. You don't have to elaborate too much, but this is going to
Okay.
bring a level of personability, and it doesn't have to do with politics.
Okay.
So, outside of your house or around your family, when you're not governing and where you're not legislating, and you're not having to deal with all the problems of the entire state, where do you like to go in the state of Colorado just to get away and go enjoy what you like to do?
Well, it used to be, I was the president of the South Platte Valley Historical Society. And I used to go every Saturday and we rebuilt the Fort
Fort
Lupton
Lupton.
from
Mhm.
1836. And I'm telling you, it's the best stress reliever. You go there, you're throwing mud on, like literally throwing mud on the walls and putting the stucco up. That was really good. I mean, so I like to volunteer. I like to get out and see things. So that's one thing I used to do. I love to garden. I used to own a flower shop. So now I like to watch things grow and put my gardening together. And then I have 6 grandsons. So we go wherever, just to have fun, and enjoy, life with those kids, because that's what it's about. So I will go. I love to go to the mountains. I love to just go out in my backyard, that type of thing as well, and just chill out. And I just like to go around and see the sights in the state of Colorado. We have a beautiful state. Every county, every inch of our state has something to offer for somebody in this state, and I just like to go out and see it. And so I do a lot of traveling around, and I take the grandkids with me as well because it's good for them to see it as well too. So that's what I do.
So when you're doing something like that and you get a chance just to spend a little bit of time with Barbara Kirkmeyer, the senator that just stepped out of the suit or the dress, what would you like to eat if you have a chance just to sit down and not be judged and just pig out on what you want? What would you like to eat yourself?
My friends and family give me a hard time because I really like Mexican food, and so I know where all the really good Mexican food places are between here and pretty much everywhere. It feels like, but so that's what I do. In fact, I have 3 grandsons who live in Nebraska now, and they were just here a couple of weeks ago. And the minute they showed up, they're like, one of our favorite restaurants is the Spicy Taco. I don't know if I could say that or not, but I just did. It's the Spicy Taco in Brighton, and they're like, "We're going there, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're going tonight." So that's what I like to do. I like burritos, enchiladas, chili rellenos, you name it. We like it. We do fajitas. It's all good. So that's what I like.
And final question I'll have for you tonight, Senator, is are you a sports aficionado? And if so, what is your particular sport that you like? And maybe that's because of grandkids or somebody plays it, or maybe you did it as a younger woman. Um, what do you like for sports?
Football. I mean, so my degree in college was in physical education, so I like a lot of the sports. I like watching the Olympics, but I like watching the Broncos. But I'm a huge college football fan, and go Buffs! I graduated from the University of Colorado. I've been a season ticket holder for Gosh, a very long time. Um, and my family all goes as well. I take the grandkids, that type of thing. So I'm a big, huge college football fan. My favorite TV show is College Game Day, and I'll go see a football game pretty much anywhere. So it's fun. I just like watching it.
Good deal, and that's pretty cool. And last deal, is there any party shots you'd like to turn around and give that maybe you didn't get a chance to cover, or something that came to mind, or is this something you just wanted to turn around and express? Maybe something that's personal that you'd like to express to the people that are listening to this that will probably get some sound bites off of it. So however you want to carry it.
Yeah, I would just say again, I'm a mom and I'm a grandmother and I'm a fourth generation Colorado and this is my state and I love this state and I'm going to go fight for it and I'm going to go fight for you to make sure that everyone has the opportunities that I had growing up in this state. And I will roll up my sleeves, get to work, we'll get the job done, we'll make our state a better place to live because we all deserve it. And I will be a governor for everyone in the state of Colorado.
Well, Senator Kirkmeyer, we sure appreciate the time to spend. I know we had a little bit of technical difficulties earlier on today. The wind was
Yeah.
blowing or the stars weren't aligned or something, but I appreciate you taking the time. And I know that our listeners and viewers will as well. And I'm hopeful to wish you the best in this whole process. And hopefully we can turn around and put some rubber to the road when the time is right to make sure that we do what's best for the state of Colorado. And I know that that's what your mission is as well.
Yeah, it's a serious time, and we need to have a top of the ticket that is strong, that understands how to govern, and can get the job done in this state and be ready to go on day one. So I would thank you, Dan. Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. It was great. And again, would love to come back on at any time.
Appreciate that very much. Well, that's another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, as we're trying to get into the politics of what Colorado's gubernatorial race is and trying to set the record straight on different levels, Republican and Democrat alike, and pay attention to the things that are important to the sportsmen and women, the conservation-minded, science-based wildlife managers of the state of Colorado. Until next time, thank you very much. Aim small, miss small, and stay the course. If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50-plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. In the world of throwaway furniture, the folks at Rustic Living are creating heirloom furniture the right way. Each of their over 3,000 designs start with hand-selected aspens, milled and kiln-dried in-house to ensure your piece, whether it's a bed, table, dresser, or anything else, lasts forever and beyond. Their artisans hand sand, hand fit, and hand finish each piece. It's craftsmanship that you can see and feel. I personally own a number of the pieces and absolutely recommend Rustic Living to anyone who wants to turn their cabin or farmhouse into a true mountain home. At Through the Gates, we constantly talk about sustainable use of the resource. Rustic Living has a long-standing relationship with the U.S. Forest Service, hand-selecting stands and trees to ensure our forests remain healthy and your furniture lasts for generations. Rustic Living, right out of Alamosa, Colorado. Stop in on your next adventure through the great San Luis Valley or visit their website at rusticliving.com. We always talk about supporting businesses that support our efforts to be able to save the hunt in Colorado. Well, the Colorado Shed Company in Penrose, Colorado, just outside Canyon City, is one of those partners. Colorado Shed has been building sheds in the state of Colorado for the last 10 years and is actually owned by sportsmen and women. They support the efforts of what the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management has done, and they also support all the organizations that you're probably a member of. Whether you're looking for small modular type buildings, sheds for your property to store the extra hunting equipment, or maybe just to turn around and put that freezer in for all the meat that you've got, check out Colorado Sheds. They also do pole barns and can do custom manufacturing to whatever your heart desires. She sheds, man caves, it doesn't matter. Check out coloradosheds.com. Well, we've got a great episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and I am privileged and proud to say that I'm sitting here in our own individual recording studios with gubernatorial candidate Victor Marx for the state of Colorado. And Mr. Marx has attended a couple different functions on the sporting side of things. We got him to come to the Sportsman's Day at the Capitol on April 23rd, where we fed a bunch of people, and he did a bunch of interviews and met some of our constituents and the people that we deal with. He also came to the Mile High Hunting and Fishing Expo, at the National Western Stock Show complex back in March. And he actually sat down with us virtually on the steering committee for the Colorado Wildlife Conservation Project as well. And he's been trying to immerse himself as much as what he possibly could into the conservation, sporting, hunting, and fishing side of things. And I'm just proud and privileged, Mr. Marks, to have you on site and have a conversation and kind of get a feel for where you're at and the things you're having to dealing with right now, sir.
Well, Dan, it's great to be on. Great to see you again. And we're doing great as a campaign. According to all the polls and metrics, we're leading, and not by a small margin, but significant. And I think it's because people in Colorado, I'm talking Coloradans, not just Republicans or unaffiliates, even Democrats, just the sum total of people, Coloradans, they're tired of the politics. They're tired of where we are because of politicians. And they're looking at me as, well, I don't know if we can do any worse continuing politics because we're pretty upside down. But no, I think they're appreciating our rallies, my policy positions, and my what I would call real world leadership.
So while everybody probably knows a little bit about Victor Marx, Mr. Marks, give us just a short rundown of why in the heck would you put your name into a hat on something? Seems like you've had a really good life, and all of a sudden you want to turn around and put your name in a hat when you haven't played in the political realm, but at the same time, something that you feel empowered to do and the need to do for Colorado.
Well, you're right. I've had a great life, a life of coming from hardship as a kid, joining the Marine Corps, and then, doing things that people thought couldn't be done. And that's been our passion, is to help people. I think we got best known for helping women and children overseas who were being affected by ISIS or even south of the border by the cartels, or here in the U.S. with helping children who, again, have been exploited. And we do that by, through, and with law enforcement, with a task force that I founded a few years back. So things are going great. The last thing I ever expected was to step into the political realm because, as I told folks during the debate, this would not be a promotion for me. Becoming governor of the state of Colorado is to keep it from becoming like California. And I do it because I love Colorado. We had one of our babies here. We buried my bride's mom here. And this is a state I've chosen to die in. At the end of my days, I want to be buried here. I love Colorado. It is known as the promised land of people around the world, but yet it's been hijacked all because of politics. And we had to make the decision, Dan. Do we pack up and leave like so many other families, or do we stay and fight? And I'm comfortable in conflict. And I said, well, let's go ahead and do the deal. And I'll tell you, everything I've said, everything I've predicted since I announced October 1st has come to pass, including other people who were candidates. I let people know who was in for real, who would not be in. And we've outraised everybody, including Democrats in fundraising. So all the metrics, I would just say this to folks. I have a gift of pulling teams together of people who are better than me in their area of expertise and leading them well to do things most people say can't be done. So here we are.
Well, one of the things you just said, you have a gift of pulling people together, and obviously you've been seeing a lot of things that are happening in the state government, especially, obviously you were paying attention before, but you're starting to see things a little bit more closely because everybody's reaching out to you. I mean, everybody wants a piece of a governor's mind or thought process or a candidate. Jumping into the conservation conversation, because I know your time is limited, sir, and we're trying to take advantage of it. From what you've seen and what you've intertwined yourself into, like coming to the Capitol for Sportsman's Day or coming to the Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo, do you see something that is a level of commonality, no matter whether somebody is a Democrat or Republican or independent, when it comes to the conservation, hunting, and fishing side of things that concerns you? And if so, what and how would you intend on being additive to try to make it better?
Yeah, great question. I would say this. The average consumer of the beauty of Colorado, whether hunting, fishing, or parks or hike, whatever it is, they all share a concern now that, wait a minute, I thought this was being taken care of, but it looks like our freedoms, liberties, and common sense has been sidelined because of political ideology. That's what I'm hearing from people. And folks like you and the organizations that you've put me in contact with and the meetings we've had, it proves that point. So I would say for me, I express a common deep concern like y'all over Governor Polis's use of that appointment power. He has stacked the Parks and Wildlife Commissions with anti-hunting, anti-fishing, and preservation-only commissioners that really are undermining the science-based, expert-driven aspect of the CPW agency. That was the first thing that I couldn't believe has been done. As I said yesterday, standing on a flatbed with people sitting on bales of hay in Tellier County, I said, man, Polis has put people on commissions that have never put a hook in the water or sighted in something that they wanted to eat for food or sport. And I'll tell you, Coloradans get that. There's an absolute disconnect with those people who, oh my gosh, they don't understand or appreciate science-based, lived-out experience. And Polis was intentional with that.
Yeah, one thing that we've been dealing with over the course of the last 7.5 years, sir, is that what we consider to be, the community considers to be undermining manipulation on a large scale. And a lot of it started 2 years after the governor was elected with the introduction of wolves, or at least the passage of that through Proposition 114. And while he didn't do it himself, it's a common assumption, allegation, that there's been a lot of input from the administration coming down to the managing agency through the Department of Natural Resources and Colorado Parks and Wildlife as well. If you become governor, what would be the first thing that you would try to do to help right the ship? Not necessarily scrap it and put it out to sail, but right the ship to make things better, because there's been five directors of Colorado Parks and Wildlife in the last 7.5 years, which doesn't show a level of leadership in my mind. But 5 individuals that have come in to try to do what was best for the agency, and then didn't really have the full unequivocal authority because there was so much input given from the top level through the Department of Natural Resources and CPW. What would Governor Victor Marx decide to do just with Colorado Parks and Wildlife at this point in time, or the Department of Natural Resources?
Well, I'd call for immediate commission reform, restore clear separation between the 11-member commission and the CPW staff. What I think there's like 1,000 biologists and managers. We need to return the oversight to the experts and cease this political interference. Like with everything else I'm going to do, I will demand a full financial transparency and audit of CPW's reserves and spending, especially given how the agency was growing responsible. Their responsibilities included gun laws, wolf reintroduction, the pollinators, wildfires, and eroding staff. The eroding staff and their capacity is what I call a non-tangible, right? Where when a staff or people, the morale starts to drop, performance is going to drop. And I'm seeing this, Dan, across every agency. I just was meeting with some law enforcement agencies yesterday, and everywhere I go, I don't care if it's Denver PD or if it's sheriff's departments, rural, it doesn't matter. The morale is so low. And what that is a leadership and management problem that can be solved without spending more money. So I think when I get in as governor, law enforcement, they already know I'm the best friend for law enforcement, and the worst enemy for criminals. That will bring the morale up high. Just like I'm meeting with people who I'm doing it privately, but I have been meeting with leadership in the CPW because I want to find out what's going on from the inside out. It's like when I travel to a country to affect positive change. I don't go in there and say, hey, this is the American way to do it. We do an assessment phase after being aware of the problem, which you've helped me become aware in your colleagues of really behind the curtain stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, the average Coloradoan doesn't know how bad it is. But then we assess. And the assessment phase is what we're in right now, realizing what needs to be done. And some things you avoid because it's the standard old way of thinking. And I'm telling you right now, moving forward, we can't. We can't stay in this negative, dysfunctional way of thinking that those on the Golden Dome have put on CPW and on the people of Colorado. And then we take action that's measured, that's a result of sitting down with the experts, putting teams together to go, what is the best way moving forward for the whole system? So I'm excited about that, and so are the people who want to see me as governor.
Well, it's interesting, too, Mr. Marks, that, the hunting and fishing side of things makes up about 4% of the entire state population. But studies have indicated that around 94% of all people in the state of Colorado provide some sort of outdoor recreation to themselves, whether it's hang gliding or dog walking or geocaching or mountain biking or some things that 30 years ago I didn't even know existed. Now it seems like everybody's out there running around in spandex and leotards doing something at some point in time. We've gotten to a point on the hunting and fishing side that while there's a $3.25 billion economic impact to that with roughly 25,000 jobs, there's 900,000 acres of ground that CPW manages in some capacity, 43 state parks, 350 state wildlife areas. There are around 1,100 employees, as you mentioned, 350 biologists. I think there's about 1,100 seasonal employees. The driving factor of a managing agency like Colorado Parks and Wildlife has such concern about our habitat and natural resources and the wildlife and the water and the air and all the stuff. Recreation plays a completely different part of that. And while recreation as a whole doesn't necessarily contribute like sporting, hunting and fishing dollars do, or the excise taxes from Daniel Johnson and Pittman Robertson, do you see something that could be additive during the time that when you become governor, what you would like to see on everybody, providing some sort of pay-to-play mentality, whether it's a mountain biker or a backpacker? I don't know if it's a tax. I don't know if it's a fee. I don't know if it's some sort of other program. But the burden can't just rely on a few to provide the services or the benefits of many. And do you have anything in your mind or that you've been talking to through the people that would be additive to that process to be able to make things better for the future in perpetuity?
Yes. And I'll tell you this, the folks of Colorado and those who love to visit here through tourism, no one has a problem with making sure the second greatest aspect of our state, which is the Colorado mountains, rivers, streams, all of it, from the plains to the top of the mountains, they want this taken care of, and they don't mind making sure it is by providing. So I think we got to emphasize the enormous economic benefits of regulated hunting and fishing. It's just like you said, hundreds of millions to billions annually. And the need to balance recreation with core wildlife and the habitat protection can be done. This is something that people are excited about, but we can emphasize, Dan, and I have never heard any pushback except from people who have this extreme mentality of this leftist progression that they don't know anything about conservation. They institute the word preservation, but it's really like the wolves. That's been a complete debacle.
Yeah, and it's gotten to the point to where it's actually created more divisiveness than I think anybody actually ever really intended on, or the ideology of that process probably created more divisiveness in both sectors of the general public. Urban-rural divide. You hear that often, the urban-rural divide. What would Governor Victor Marx do to help bridge that gap on the urban-rural divide. And it's not just about wolves. It's about water. It's about agriculture, about everything. What would you do in the first 180 days, or maybe in the first 4 years, or maybe the second term if you decide to run, to be able to make that urban-rural divide not so definitive and actually brush the brush across there to where people start to realize that what happens on the Front Range affects people on the Western Slope, and what happens in the middle of the part of the state affects everybody on the Front Range, and vice versa?
Well, I'm going to tell you something that's going to surprise you. It has surprised most. One, I've been out, as you know, since October 1st. I've spoken probably close to 125 times now. That's meeting with people all over the state. And you know how the perception and reality of people who are urban or ag or ranchers feel disconnected to Denver, right? They just go, we're not heard. And they're telling me, please don't forget about us. Please don't. I go, I can't. How can I forget about y'all? It's Colorado. But here's the surprising part. The urban folks, Denver, people who live in the jungle, the concrete jungle, they've expressed, and I'm telling you it's sincere, they've said, Mr. Marx, we don't feel connected to the rest of Colorado. We feel like, we're outsiders when it comes time for ranchers or ag. So they'll go to the ski resort, they'll go to the rivers, streams, but then they go back. They don't feel connected. And that's actually a pain point for Coloradans who are city dwellers, And look, I talked with a fella who has 8,000 tenants with over 350 buildings in Denver. And we talked about a lot. And, I met him at a Democratic fundraiser for me, of all things. And even them, they are worn out. So it's exciting. I want to be able to bridge the divide, break the barriers, and say it's not Denver and rural ranchers. It's all of Coloradans. And that's what our campaign is doing. And people see it. We're not using all this for political, weaponry. We're just uniting Coloradans. And I'm telling you, this sounds crazy, but there are small groups, towns, people that would be considered in the heavily populated areas of Denver that can adopt a small town, a rural area, and be like sister cities, sister towns, and come and learn. I told the folks out, I told a bunch of ranchers at ag, we'll get them city folks to come muck some stalls and help clean up. It'll be the same way. Why can't we get groups who want to be part of Colorado, but they're living in the city, to do wildfire cleanup? This stuff can be done. I was up at, the start of the headwaters, and seeing and hearing their heart. That big fire that happened up there about 5 years ago at Grand Lake, they're telling me we've never got help. That's up in Grand Lake. And it's still dangerous because of the amount of wood on the ground. I'm thinking all this is common sense. I know there are people in Denver that would love to put teams together to go up there, learn how to use a chainsaw, get trucks, load out, clean, clear. We can do that all over Colorado. Therefore, now you're really combining Coloradans together. This ain't a pipe dream, and I'll tell you why. I said earlier that one of my strengths is bringing solutions to problems that people think can't be done. Here's a small example. I'm way out in East Colorado. I'm at a little VFW talking to, 30 people. And at the end, I said, questions, insights, challenges. How can I help you when I'm governor? And this dad who had been sitting there, and he's a rough-looking dude, but I can tell he's emotional. He came forward, and he goes, my daughter is a special needs child in a wheelchair. He goes, I've been fighting the school system to try to get a chairlift for the upstairs bathroom in our school. They have not done it. And the lower bathroom, they'd opened the door, Dan. There wasn't even a protective barrier because it was a handicap restroom. And he said, she's been embarrassed, lost her dignity so many times. He goes, how does one person like me fight the school system? I looked around the room. I said, everybody want to see this solution? They're like, yeah. I called this. Well, actually, I got connected to the school superintendent. And when I talked to him, I said, hello, sir. He goes, hey, Mr. Marx, fan of yours, whatnot, hoping you become governor. I said, great. I said, well, I'm standing in front of your school, and here's a great opportunity to be a hero and help us get a chairlift. Oh, I'm familiar with that. We're working on it. I said, great, because I'm about to post a video telling millions of followers just how excited you are to help this dad and daughter out. He's like, oh, okay. What are you going to say in the video? I said, I'm going to tell them the truth, that you're a great school superintendent and you're going to make it happen. He said, yes, sir. Dan, it wasn't 2 weeks later, that little girl got a chairlift for her to use the upstairs restroom. That is an example of common sense leadership that we can do all over the state, especially in the world of hunting, fishing, wildlife. People want to be connected. It's a leadership and management problem. That's it. And I know you, having visited with you and your colleagues, the frustration of where's the common sense? When I know this firsthand, that Jared Polis's husband is rewriting policy for CPW. He's not even a state employee. The frustration y'all feel of people being on those commissions and boards that don't know the first thing about it. Don't know the first thing. And I've said it from the beginning. Let the people who work the land, let the people who hunt and fish, let them be the decision makers on how you manage land, wildlife, water. This is all self-correcting, and it's not that hard. You just got to have a leader with a backbone in all these key positions, and I'm excited about protecting our water. That's why I went up to the Grand Lake. I was like, show me the mountain where the water comes out. This is the head, for the upper basin. This is the coolest thing because I know the upper basin has Utah, Wyoming, us, New Mexico in it. The lower basin is Arizona, Nevada, California. A lot of people don't understand that Colorado River serves 40 million people. And that compact, the prior preparations doctrine in 1922, it just doesn't fit this day and age. We don't have the water. We don't have the snowpack. So things have to be changed. And I know 40% of the water is being used by California. They're working on a desalinization plant. But as governor, I'm already fighting for our water rights because the feds are circling. The last thing we need is them to step in. It's Colorado's water. So that's why I'm standing up a water security task force led by farmers, ranchers, not lobbyists, to defend every drop of Colorado's water.
So over the course of the last, let's say, 18 months or so, have you had a chance to interact with the agricultural community? And do you see the similar frustrations from like the Department of Agriculture and the inner workings with the ag community as we see on the sporting side of things for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission? And then second to that, and I asked Senator Kirkmeyer the same question or something similar, because of the crossover between the Department of Agriculture and Colorado Parks and Wildlife and them having to work closely together for a variety of reasons, have you seen where there's similarities in what we would, I guess, identify as manipulation or undermining this on the ag side of it just as much as CPW?
I have, and I've met with those who are decision makers and those who feel the consequences of it. Again, my concern is that those people under the Golden Dome have done a little smoke screening And they tell regular Coloradans, the politicking part is too difficult, and don't look behind the curtain. And the long bill is a great example of that, which affects all of us. I got into the long bill myself. I spent a couple of days in there, and on the debate platform, I made that statement. I said, "Ooh, that's something else," and it's not an easy thing. And Senator Kirkmeyer goes, "I understand it, or it's not hard for me." I'm like, "Well, good for you. I don't know if that's an apology, because if you understand it that well, and we're all still suffering, I don't know if that's something to brag about." But look, we're putting together a team right now for in-depth analysis of the long bill. We're finding where waste is right now, so that when we hit our first 100 days, and we're looking into the ag and ranchers' pain points, into the wildlife and parks pain points, the commonality, the thread between all this is simply bad leadership and bad management. I don't think people can appreciate that, where if you just get the right people, get the right, as they say, get the right butts in the right seats, watch what happens and how quickly it can happen. Common sense is just not common anymore. And that's why we're excited. That's why I've met with you, your colleagues. That's why I've been listening to people more than talking, because our next phase, when we enter that general, that's when we're going to start revealing things. Unfortunately, I've had to keep things closer to my chest, because those other two candidates, they beg, borrow, and steal stuff I'm saying and doing, which I'm thinking, why in the world? Stop using my phrases. But because I've been leading in everything, fundraising, popularity with people, they think taking stuff from me is going to help them. It won't, because at your very core, you got to be a real-world leader with real-world experience to get stuff done.
Well, Mr. Marx, understanding the legislative makeup in Colorado at this point in time, you got, I think it's 23-12 in the Senate, Democrats versus Republicans, and I think it's 46-19 in the House. As an outsider, so to speak, because you're not a politician, coming in and being able to turn around and navigate that landscape appropriately, do you think that you have the skills to be able to do so on so many different things, whereas if you became governor on January 12th or 13th or whatever the inauguration date is, that you have the wherewithal to be able to start connecting the dots, as divided as this General Assembly and this legislature has become?
Well, I don't think anybody could do it better than me, because what we're talking about is relationship. We're talking about negotiations, not debate. That's why I tell people, the debates are a waste of time. I'm not a debater, I'm a negotiator. And I'll give you an example. Could you take any of the other four candidates, drop them into Haiti, and say, protect an orphanage, establish great comms between the president of Haiti, and start communicating with the leader of the biggest gang affiliation group in Haiti, stop death, and then go meet with Jimmy Barbecue Terezzion, a guy who has a $5 million bounty on his head from the FBI, and negotiate with him to stop all attacks against orphanages and stop kidnappings from missionaries. I did it, and it's on video. That's one example. I don't care if I'm in Southeast Asia, all the way down to Colombia, the Middle East, Syria, Iraq. Listen, human relations, dealing with people with multiple mindsets is my specialty. And I like a two-party system, not a one-party rule, which is what's caused us so much trouble. And I'll give you an example. I was in Grand Junction speaking to a couple of thousand people, Dan, and I'm backstage getting ready to go out. And this fellow comes up to me, host. He goes, "Hey, the Senate Majority Leader, the President of the Senate, is here. He's a Democrat. He's sitting on the front row." And to me, I was, I try to laugh at everything. I said, "Why are we whispering? Can he hear? I mean, how good is this guy?" And I go, "Why is he here?" He goes, he said he's a fan of yours. He's been following you for years or something. He was trying to communicate to me that I didn't confirm all that, but I spoke. I watched James, this influential, powerful head of the Senate, Democrat, laughing, enjoying my talk. Afterwards, we met, shook hands, took some pictures together, and I said, man. And I met him that day and got to visit with him again when you were feeding us good wildlife food. And he says, man, I'm watching you. It's looking good. I said, yep. I said, now I need to come up here and get a cup of coffee with you, let you show me around. And he goes, I look forward to it. This is just relationship. And, the other candidate, one of them, the pastor, man, he can't get a bill passed to save his life. He's a doorstop up there. And the good Senator Kirkmeyer, well, she's a professional politician. And while she could get some things done, my concern, it won't be for the people of Colorado, but it'll be in the realm that she's been professional at for, in my opinion, far too many years. It's time for change of leadership, change of thought process. So I'm not worried at all, because when you can remove the pain of people, look, Democrats, anybody, we all feel the pain of it. Our state's not affordable. Man, it's not safe like it used to be. How come right now there's not accountability and transparency for the government up there? I don't trust hardly anyone up there. There's a few, but there should be accountability and transparency for the spending. The bottom line, that's the problem with our state. Bad leadership, bad management, poor people in places of positions they shouldn't be. But they're addicted to spending, Dan. You know that. And if they're writing the checks, we're the ones having to pay for it. And that's going to stop with me. Starting day one, I'm going to call for 10% cut in every agency's their budgets. And it can be done. Trust me. If there are circumstances where they come and can prove the performance base should be less, fine, we'll work on that. But, man, we're going to zero-base the budget. People are going to have to prove they're just going to get a rollover every year, because I'm happy to approve a budget, a healthy budget that helps the people of Colorado, helps us with our core essentials, and helps us keep Colorado beautiful, a place where people want to come for tourism and vacation, where hunters want to come. I mean, there's so much that can be done, but I feel the pain of people working in the system, in the state, going, my gosh, can we just get some leadership up in here?
What about the Second Amendment, sir? I know what your position is, but how are you going to attempt to try to address the travesties from a Second Amendment position that have been taking place over the last 6 or 7 years?
Well, if it can be written in, it can be written out. There's work to get it done, but I can say without question, my biggest passion about this is I'm going to enshrine in the Constitution our Second Amendment rights. And once that happens, they can leave it alone, because all these attempts to take away our constitutional right has got to end. And I think the way we do it is just get an enshrine in the state's constitution and say, leave it alone, pick something else to fight on. But Coloradans are done with y'all messing with our rights. Shall not be infringed. So that's what I'm going to do. And again, before I even get sworn in as governor, all this is planned. All this is ready to be throttled. It'll be like dominoes. We won't start from day one. We execute at day one.
Do you see something that can be done to help soften the blow? I mean, we've lost a tremendous amount of federal firearms dealers in the state for a variety of different reasons, but mostly because of the last part of the legislative session that we've had to deal with in the last 2 or 3 years. there's people's lives that depend on this. I mean, whether it's mom and pop shops, whether it's big business that are trying to turn around and supplement their big box store operations. Do you see something that's it's thrown the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, that the tragedies that have happened on gun violence have been kind of extended straight over to every single person that owns a firearm that believes in the Second Amendment for self-defense, for sporting and recreation opportunities, for hunting opportunities? Do you see like some individuals have just thrown everybody in one pot and said everybody that does this is bad, everybody that hunts is bad, everybody that's agriculturally related is bad? Do you see something that you can do to turn around and help bridge that gap when you see that collective mentality that one group of people, no matter what it is bad, and specifically on the firearm side of it? How do you start to bridge that gap to get people to understand that it's not about everybody, it's about a few bad apples and might be a few perceptions or misconceptions about stuff? How does a Governor Victor Marx deal with the things that have been happening in the last 8 years and try to fix them incrementally, but soften the blow at the same time?
Yeah, well, let's back up to the first part of your statement. I'm an FFL owner. I'm an individual that benefits from having permits to sell, buy, and I was shocked when we got a notice that we were going to be charged $500 a year as a fee. I'm like, 500. I'm not some big money-making business. I'm a small little mom and pop for what we do. I couldn't believe it. So I feel the pain. I've talked with so many FFL owners who are moving simply based on that. They can't do their business. It's not affordable anymore. And this is a very intentional, in my opinion, far progressive, left-leaning mindset to take weapons, firearms away from people. They want to leave us shooting muskets. And I can tell you right now, nothing wrong with musket loading. Let's just get that straight. But the countries I've been in, many, to help protect or at times rescue women or children from bad people. I've spent a lifetime fighting against bad people. I have never seen good outcomes when a country or a nation starts taking away the rights of people with firearms. Never. And here in Colorado, it's Colorado, for goodness sake. This is the beginning of the West. I mean, think about it. We're celebrating 150 years, and we didn't settle this country with slingshots. There's a lot of grit, a lot of sacrifice that went into having our freedoms, but our liberties are being taken away. So I have a strong platform and a way to influence and communicate to people on both sides of this that a city and a state will not be better if you're taking weapons away, if you're limiting the use of our ability to defend ourselves or hunt in a way that makes people who are scared or they don't want violence going on. And I tell folks this, some don't believe it. I don't like violence. You know, it's, think of a hunter who, engages, takes a good kill. There's nothing violent about that in their mind of hating the animal. It's a beautiful process, whether it's a conversation, or it's food you want to eat. Man, I was eating lion yesterday. Oh my gosh, it was incredible.
You've seen, I guess, the displeasure or despair in the communities that you've been able to travel through. That everybody's got an individual gripe or complaint about something at some point in time, and sometimes government doesn't listen. Sometimes people feel that they're not heard. Other times they feel disconnected from the people that, whether they elected them or not. And as I've said many, many times, elections have consequences, whether you voted or not. Somebody's acting on your behalf, and a lot of times it's through the appointments and the hirings of the elected officials that do those appointments or hirings. When Victor Marx becomes governor, give me a rundown, sir, of what you see for the first 180 days that you, because it's not like you can just come in one fell sweep and fix everything. I mean, most people can't pay a car off in 5 years. You're darn sure not going to fix the state in 4. But give us a rundown of what you think is most pressing that needs to be addressed that you can, because when you get in, you will be dealing immediately with the legislative session.
Yes.
And there's going to be a lot of turmoil because of an outgoing governor that has been vetoing a lot of things on the Democratic side and has not been very receptive to the Republican side. And there's been a lot of consternation from the general public. What does Victor Marx do as soon as he gets in office to turn around and start, as I said, to right the ship, to
Yep.
make sure that you hit the ground running and that you just don't put the ship aground?
Yeah. Well, again, when day one happens, we're in the execution phase, not planning. I think more about the job, Dan, than I do this campaign. That's why I have an incredible team, 22 people around me running this campaign, and that's why we're winning. But you ready? I'm going to go through some things. This is what we're passionate about. First 100 days, day one, I'm going to sign executive orders to freeze any new regulations and Colorado sanctuary policies and cooperate fully with federal immigration authorities. That can be done. That doesn't cost money. Fiscal sanity has to return. Every cabinet agency, I said it earlier, will find 10% in cuts within 60 days. We're eliminating the bloat. We're not going to raid people's Tabor refunds. That's our money that we should be getting back. The Medicaid reform, because of how much it is just sucking up the budget, I'm auditing the rolls, removing ineligible enrollees. See, that's what's important. Implementing work requirements. This program, that exists for the vulnerable, not able-bodied adults who won't work. And I'll tell you, I can't tell you how many times home caregivers have come up to me crying because, well, the Joint Budget Committee signed off 4-2 to end the cut their benefits. And this mom's like, I've been a caregiver to my daughter for 30 years, and now they've cut it in half. How are we going to do this? Crying. So we're going to save money in Medicaid in order to give it to the people who deserve it, to take care of the least of these, the vulnerable. And the rest we'll put either the core things that we need or give it back to the people through refunds. So my desire is for people to keep more of their paycheck. I'd love, and this will happen, no state income tax on tips, overtime, period. We're going to bring property tax relief. I'm capping annual increases of 2% for homeowners, and I'm going to freeze property taxes entirely for seniors who've earned their home. I mean, we have to take, you want to know the health of a culture, brother, is the way you treat the kids and the seniors. And the seniors who have worked so hard, they punched the ticket. They did the deal to give us Colorado. And we've got to steward this better, not only for them, lower their stress, but for our children and grandchildren. School choice. It ain't a bureaucracy. Every Colorado family gets the power to choose the right school for their child, regardless of the zip code or income. That matters because our kids are failing. We're not producing solid kids in the public education system. Although more money is being dumped in, it's not making it to the classroom. And transparency. Look, I know so many school teachers that have talked to me that said we're overworked, we're underpaid, and we're even fearful because of the level of violence and that comes from the homes of the culture. So that's going to be changed. A parent's bill of rights will make that full transparency into what the kids are being taught starting day one. Parents will be in charge of their kids' education, not the state. And then look, I'm going to back the badge. We're ending these catch and release that has created so much uncertainty and fear and crime. There's no consequences for criminals. So I'm going to be restoring sentencing integrity and creating a law enforcement support office right inside my governor's office. I told you earlier, we're going to stand up this task force for water. Protecting our water is critical. It's not even key, it's critical. And it can be done. I can't wait. I'm going to have a liaison to my office for all water rights. I'm going to work with the Conservation Board. This, again, I think is a management and leadership problem. When they drained the Antero Reservoir and sent it to the Cheeseman, that was a good move because of evaporation. Dan, the way we've assessed the water issue is it's compartmentalized versus one system. And we're going to create a one system decision-making process to move things along faster. And along that line, infrastructure, it's a big thing for me. We got to have infrastructure that actually works. I'll do a full CDOT audit and review. Going to cut out the pork. We're going to fast-track permitting for energy projects. This is the deal that I don't know why they can't do it. But the permitting for any type of business or even personal, it's so long. It's taken a year to try to get permitting done. And I think it's radical ideology that they're trying to keep us from progressing in a way that's healthy, whether we're building or look, what happened to the marijuana money that was supposed to go to schools and roads? It ain't there. It's through an audit. We've seen what's been happening. So these are some of the things that I'm excited about. And there's more. I'm going to reveal some stuff pretty darn soon on the budget and how we're going to make Colorado work properly. Again, leadership, management, right people in the right spots. It's exciting. This is, it's a battle to get where we are, but me talking to people, the unaffiliates especially. Yesterday when I did that event in Teller County, I asked this group, I said, hey, sitting on bales of hay, I said, how many of you have never been involved in the, political process, or anything like that? 75% raised their hand. It's on video. It was incredible. And one lady stood up. She goes, I've got 2 questions. I was like, oh, you're a troublemaker then. I said, start with 1. She goes, all right. She pulls out an envelope and said, I'm making a max contribution to your campaign. The max is $1,450. She goes, I'm an unaffiliate. She goes, but I've been following you and we have to have change. Then she challenged the audience. How many of you will match this with me? And a number of people raised their hands. I'm like, holy smokes. What's your second and third question? This is only getting better. And you know what? We've raised over $2.7 million. It's never been done like this before because we're not following the old playbook. Colorado's got to get it back to where it was. We got to redo things and come out of this dysfunctional deal. We hadn't had a Republican governor for 20-something years now, 24 years. So, again, Dan, exciting. I hope this has helped you. I hope this has helped your audience. And I hope it's helped my constituents want to know more about who you are, your colleagues, what y'all do, because y'all are the ones behind the scene doing some of the hardest work. And I truly appreciate you.
Mr. Marx, I appreciate it very much. I got one more question because if I don't ask this, I'll probably get hung on the
let's
fence
go.
post out here because people are often criticizing Colorado Parks and Wildlife when it comes to the wolf introduction. And while it was the vote of the people and done by a very minimal margin, do you have any suggestions or input pertaining to that to make it better? Because the will of the people is being enacted upon. But as I asked Senator Kirkmeyer, and I've talked to other individuals about the apparent or alleged manipulation or undermining this from this administration about that specific issue, does Victor Marx have anything that he'd like to address as far as, we're not going to get rid of wolves. Wolves are here. They were coming in naturally. But what's the best path forward to try to make sure that we do the statutory obligation of what the will of the people is, and at the same time protect the ranchers inform the general public, let CPW manage all wildlife species accordingly, and then do what's best for our natural resources?
Well, I'll tell you some. I love that question. One thing that will absolutely be done is we have to educate the people. You know, those lawmakers, they sure have a way to get stuff passed through not common language, where you read it, you think you're voting for one thing, but you're voting for another. And we've got to put stuff in common language. The second, we have to educate folks. We've got to educate folks. Can you imagine when I use my platform of 3 million people to take time to do a video with you or an agency head, and I go, there's a bill, there's a ballot initiative coming up. Here's the truth. We'll whiteboard it out and give people understand the difference between conservation and preservation, to understand the impact. What's the fiscal impact, right? How will this affect ranchers? The pros and the cons. And, the reality is, they've overspent what they were trying to do, even with the wolf introduction. That's where the ROI, you just got to go, hey, I think educating people, Coloradans are not dumb. Politicians try to act like, well, you don't really understand this. This is the second time I've said it because I've seen it. I've seen it in the personalities like Senator Kirkmeyer. And I say this respectfully, but there's an arrogance of just let us do it. The politicians know what to be done. Look where we're at. That's my pitch. If y'all are so good at what you do, why are we so upside down? And I'm excited about being able to let people make informed decisions through timely education of what's right. And again, I can do it. My gosh, I can do it with my social media account. And I'll be reaching the people of Colorado because this is about them. It's not about radical ideology. It's not about money making. It's not about lobbyists who don't care for Colorado, but only what they want. This is about the people and the will of the people. That's why I'm running for the people. I'm not running for the politicians or the critics. And I think that's been why it's been difficult that so many people have come against us. Factions within the Republican Party that normally hate each other have united to come against me. And all I say is, bring it. If that's all y'all got, it only strengthens us. It only proves to the voter how messed up things are. So, yeah, I'm the agent of change, and we're excited to win, and I appreciate spending time with you. Again, your introductions to the right people to help get me oriented to what's really going on. And I look forward to becoming governor and helping all of Colorado in that way.
Victor, thanks a bunch. We really appreciate the opportunity, and we're wishing you luck along with your trials and tribulations that you have to deal with over the course of the next several weeks up until the primary. We'd love to be able to get together after the primary and try to put some of these other pieces together because this is an ongoing conversation. And
yes,
after the primary, if you're so lucky to be moving forward, there's going to be a lot of stuff thrown at both directions, I assume, and everybody's going to be pulling everything out of the box that they possibly can. But we look forward to that. We appreciate your time. This is another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt. We appreciate the opportunity of different candidates being able to come on, discuss some of the sporting, hunting, conservation, agricultural issues that address our communities. And in the meantime, you make sure you look up Mr. Marx. You want to give your website, sir?
Victor2026.com.
Victor2026.
2026.com. Let's go.
I appreciate that very much. Another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt. Keep subscribing, keep listening, keep, doing whatever you need to do to get the answers that you need on a variety of different levels and not just on the gubernatorial races, but there's plenty of other things going on as well. So until next time, aim small, miss small, stay the course, and help us continue to save the hunt. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.